All right, welcome, my friends, to another episode of Xtreme Health Radio. Thanks for being here. This is going to be a fun show. I'm really excited to talk about indoor air quality because, in my opinion, it's one of the most overlooked things.
It is.
It is, right? So, we have David Milburn in the show, or in the studio, I should say, on the show. We're going to talk about air purification and how it relates to lung health and how it relates to disease and just the interconnectedness of it all, and some solutions. So this will be fun.
Yeah, that's our hope.
All right, guys. So if you guys want to join the show, if you're listening on the go, let me turn down the background audio music really quickly. There we go. If you guys want to check out the show notes in the future, it's available. Everything will be available at extremehealthradio.com/622. And we'll put links to everything that we talk about on that page, episode 622, extremehealthradio.com/622. And hopefully you guys can hear us and see us on YouTube. If you can't, I'll try to check that out and make sure that everything's working on there. And we are super happy to be back. We've taken a few months off, and now we're really glad to be back doing shows again, doing live shows again, and it's a lot of fun. So the format has changed a little bit. The Wednesday show is kind of an iffy time, so it's definitely going to be Mondays and Fridays for the shows. Either in studio or remote. So those will be on Mondays and Fridays. So let me bring up David here, and so we can get you on the camera. How's it going, Dave?
It's going great. This is a
Great.
good way to start a week.
Yeah. Feel free to take these off if you want.
Okay.
So I learned about your work through our mutual friend, Matt Blackburn, and been diving in and looking more at your research and everything that you have going on. And I think, like I was saying before, this is one of the most overlooked, I think, issues in health because a lot of people focus on food.
Yep.
A lot of people focus on a lot of sort of external factors that don't move the needle as much, I think. Yep. I mean, how much air are we breathing? And no one's even talking about that. It's crazy.
I've heard it described as an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Every day is the amount of air you breathe.
Olympic-sized swimming pool?
Mm-hmm. And if you think about all the things
Wow.
that you're essentially ingesting through air, but the problem is, in most cases, we can't see, taste, smell what we're breathing. And so it's very hard to interact with. And
Right.
even the symptoms can be very different person to person.
Right.
So it's not a really clean-cut thing that you can experience in many cases. Something like a virus, you never even know you breathe it in,
Right.
let alone a type of chemical or, a super, super, super fine particulate.
Yeah.
You just don't get to experience those in a lot of cases.
Yeah. You breathe it in. You don't even know you breathed it in. And all of a sudden
And so we have all kinds of customers that once they actually link what's in their air to how they're feeling, they can take steps to address it. But a lot of times, just historically, we never assume that our air is affecting our health, how we sleep, how we feel.
Is it do people in the alternative field, I feel like most people understand that at a visceral level, but they don't really apply it. They don't really put in the effort to clean their indoor air environment. But I don't think a lot of people just in the mainstream, and just the average person, think about that, do they?
Yeah, I think most of us are going to like fresh air when we go in the mountains.
Yeah, we just like it.
Yeah, we're going to, that's nice.
Yeah, we like that.
Yeah, there's, you go inside a room and it's musty. You don't like it. There's definitely that.
Right.
There's a smelly room or something.
Yeah.
I think we all prefer fresher air.
Yeah.
But it is rare for people to really understand how complex it is and how much it can be affecting us. And it very much affects people differently.
Right.
And because there's so many different elements in it, you can have allergies to certain things. And people that are more symptomatic, I think, are a little bit more intentional because they're understanding, hey, when I go outside on this day, I feel really, really bad.
Right.
Or when I go into this room,
I feel worse.
Yes, whatever it is, there's kind of a, whether it's, congestion or you just kind of feel sick or low energy.
Right.
People at work, describe, they feel fine at home, but then when they go in their office, now they feel lethargic or.
Yeah, and especially exposure to that over a long period of time, whether it's indoors, at home, or at work too. I mean, you figure at least 40 hours a week, and then you're talking about travel to work in your car and then being at home, So I read recently where it's like I think we're spending 90% of our time
That's
indoors.
the average estimate from the CDC. It's 90%.
Crazy. Is that right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's got to be right?
I mean, average.
Yeah.
So if you think about sleeping, working, just
in the car.
Yeah, you just you name it.
Yeah.
Very few of us are spending a lot of our days outside.
I wonder how many people spent time outside as kids, like what the average for like maybe a 5 or 10-year-old, because it's got to be way less.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
it's
these days it might be different. But,
yeah, everyone's gaming, right?
yeah. So I think you have to be a little bit more intentional.
Yeah, because when I was a kid and you were a kid, it's just like we just were outdoors all day long.
A lot of times, yep. So I think that is changing, and as we're spending more and more time indoors as a society, I think the issue is becoming more relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we do deal with is increasing steps towards energy efficiency of buildings is in many cases reducing the quality of air, because we're sealing up our buildings tighter, so less outdoor air, because that's a lot of times energy intensive to cool or heat,
right?
And so we close up our buildings really tight, and that is in turn trapping everything inside, and there's not the kind of revitalization of the air through any method.
Yeah.
And we're bringing in all kinds of, ourselves, our sources of contaminants, but we're also bringing in all kinds of things that are off-gassing, or, we're bringing in bacteria and mold.
Chemicals.
And all kinds of things. And a lot of times those are getting trapped inside.
How are we part of the source of the problem other than the things that we bring in? Are you talking about like things that are attached to our skin that flake off?
Yeah, we're always kind of carriers.
Yeah.
In the medical industry, when we're working in the hospitals, I've heard people say that typically it's you're the biggest source of contamination, because you're carrying in all these things from outside. Whether we're we might be perfectly healthy and we might have like something like a MRSA on our skin,
right?
And it's no problem to us. But we are carrying it in. It could be in our nasal passages.
Crazy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was reading something recently where since the early 1960s, I think there have been the introduction of 60,000 new chemicals.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? And so my thought is like, okay, that's probably not accounting for maybe GMOs or maybe chemtrails or glyphosates. Maybe it's not counting that. I don't know, but 60,000 so in 1960 there had to have been hundreds of thousands already existing.
And one of the things we look at really and try to, I think, educate on is concentration as well. So we're being exposed to concentrations of things that otherwise might not affect us. Something like mold. We might be exposed to a lot of types of mold outside, but inside you can get concentrations of these things that become much more problematic.
So what happens with a particular mold spore? They just sort of concentrate and then inside? I mean, why would that be any different than outside?
So like mold is, I think, a good example because it does like indoor environments, damp, humidity. It feeds on, biological matter.
Right.
And so it can get nice little environments, in the damp HVAC of our homes or in a bathroom. And then it essentially kind of incubates. It's really a weird thing. If you
and
think
maybe
about
there's no
much.
other competition for it too. Like outside there would be competing organisms.
Sunlight. There's a lot of factors outside that are going to not result in just black mold all over.
Right.
Like a room or something.
So maybe black mold is some sort of type of mold that will proliferate like crazy in the absence of competing mold spores that might take it down in the outside environment.
There's a lot of things outside that are naturally dealing with in our area, and as a company we're trying to replicate those processes inside. So we're not trying to do anything really that new or synthetic inside. We're just trying to make indoor air like how natural outdoor air would be. But something like mold, I mean, it's growing on a surface. It's feeding on organic matter. It's producing spores. It's producing toxins. The spores are particulates, like physical matter. Those things are kind of blowing throughout the air and then growing. And so you're breathing those things in. At the point that you're smelling kind of a mustiness, it's pretty high concentration at that point.
Really?
Yeah.
How high do you think it is?
I mean,
it's hard to tell. But
it's hard to really quantify these things in a way that's understandable. I mean, you're looking at spore counts. You might have 100,000 of this type of
just on a head of a needle or something.
Yeah, and it's hard to really wrap your mind around that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
that's funny.
It's significantly higher than what is healthy, and you're going to have maybe 10 people go into that room, and out of those 10, 8, 9 are going to be totally fine.
Yeah.
And then you might have one that they wake up and they can't hardly move. And so we get all kinds of customers that have severe reactions
I bet.
to something like mold. And same with something like a pollen.
Mm-hmm.
One person might have a very severe reaction to it, and then another person is totally fine. So
I'd probably argue though that even though the person's technically fine, they may not be. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
Like underlying.
You just see the symptoms at least significantly more.
Yeah.
And definitely someone that's like, if you think of resilience, someone that's really healthy might be much more resilient to a certain type of contaminant, whether bacteria, virus, mold, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe you get run down, or you haven't been sleeping, whatever it is. Now you're more susceptible to whatever that is.
Yeah.
And now it affects you more. So there's the problem, and then how it's reacting with us.
Yeah. And I would probably say too that, a lot of this stuff is a burden on our immune system just all the time. So if we don't realize it's happening, you can't feel it. Like you're saying before, you breathe a mold. It's not like, it's like you can, I just breathed a mold spore in. You can't sense it.
You don't. Yeah.
But these things, I wonder how much of a burden, I guess there's no way to quantify it, but I would think that it would just be putting a tremendous burden on the immune system all the time. So if maybe your immune system is being like 30% of it all the time is battling back these mold spores, then you only have 70% for other healing capacities.
Well, one of the things that we're actually kind of really fascinated with and focusing on is sleep experts.
Okay.
And kind of measuring our sleep. And sleep is an area where, we're recovering. Mm-hmm. And so you want that to be a place where you're not fighting, your environment. And there's many factors involved, but air quality is certainly one of them.
Yeah.
And so we are working with some sleep experts to try to quantify the effect of air on our sleep in a more kind of controlled setting. Because if you can have a kind of a safe place at home, it's not that you're not going to be exposed to bad stuff. You go outside, you go to work, wherever it is. You can't have, perfectly safe environments.
Right.
But at least if you have some safe spaces where you can recover, kind of build back that resilience, and then you can go about your lives and not be
so burdened by it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's as we spend more time indoors, it's really important, I think, for us to. I think the ultimate solution is just spend more time outside, but that's not practical for everybody.
It's not practical for everybody, and outdoor air is not necessarily healthy either.
Yeah.
So depending on where you live, that's also an important consideration.
Yeah. And
not just where you live, but the time of the year and the time of the day.
Yeah, I remember in our phone call you were talking about people jogging, and a lot of people don't think about the time of day they're jogging. If they're running on a busy street, the air quality might be significantly less or less toxic. 12 p.m. versus 5 p.m. or something.
Huge. We were working with a kind of outdoor air quality sensor, one of the leading, one in the world, and we were looking at data that you might see maybe 20 times jump during something like rush hour. Really? And then you couple that with an activity like jogging, where you're absorbing that much more. And so the difference between walking on that street a few hours later versus jogging during rush hour is significant in how much you're taking in of those contaminants.
So what were they able to quantify what those differences were?
Like the differences on the human body?
Well, I guess there's two different things to look at if you're going to compare running or jogging along a street at 12 p.m. versus 5 p.m. I guess you would want to look at how it affects the same person, but then actually quantifying how many toxins are in the air. Is there a way to do that?
It gets complex. So like with their sensor, they're probably looking at, CO2, maybe methane, PM2.5, particulate matter. So there's lots of different things that they're measuring for.
Right.
And most, in general, air quality sensing technologies are very limited and very expensive.
Right.
So, I've worked with, one of the leading aerospace companies in the world, and they spent, $15,000 to test for one chemical in one room, and they couldn't find it. Wow. And so it can be very difficult. A single cigarette can put out something like 7,000 different types of chemicals.
Oh my gosh.
And we've taken very sophisticated monitors into our casino clients, and it's registered 0 parts per billion of VOCs because it's not looking for the right kind. And so it can be pretty tricky. But suffice to say that the levels of contaminants are spiking significantly, but there's a lot to learn as far as what those different chemicals or particulate matter is doing to us.
Right.
I mean, we know a lot, but there's still a lot to learn.
I would imagine that there would be a difference too in whether or not there's a lot of trees or vegetation around the area where the person is running.
There's a lot of natural, I guess, defenses and kind of balancing, of factors outside that inside we don't have necessarily.
So let's think about this. So if I'm a listener and I'm listening to this and I'm realizing, wow, I really need to focus on my health. And what did you say at the beginning? First of all, how much air we breathe in a day?
I've heard it is basically similar to an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Did you say that on the show, or was that before we started recording?
I don't know.
I don't remember either. Okay.
But we breathe about an Olympic-sized swimming pool of air, of the water, of air every day.
Olympic-sized swimming pool. That's crazy.
It's hard to quantify these things, but at least there's kind of that, image that kind of gives you an idea of how much we're breathing in. Because you don't even think about the breaths you're taking.
No.
Let alone what's in it.
Yeah, we've done a few shows on how to breathe and the importance of nasal breathing versus mouth breathing and the carbon dioxide and the hemoglobin transfer and oxygen transfer and stuff. And so that's important too. But with breathing,
kind of in that regard, just not to cut you off, but like something like nasal breathing, you've got a lot of natural defenses there that are helping.
Right.
But then you look at something like from diesel exhaust, a lot of other sources, we talk about PM 2.5, and so that's a size of particulate matter.
PM 2.5.
PM 2.5 is kind of a buzzword you'll hear some.
Wow.
And so a human hair is somewhere around 50 to 75 of the PMs. So
it's PM and then 2.5.
Yeah, so PM 2.5, so micrometer. Human hair might be 50 to 75.
Oh,
and we're looking at 2.5 and
for
smaller.
what?
So that's the size of particulates that might be coming out of diesel exhaust. And so if you think about your nose like a filter,
wow,
a dog hair, it's going to get trapped. It's not going to go into your lungs. You're breathing through your nose.
Yeah, it won't make it.
But a 2.5, maybe a 1 micron, 0.5, these are so fine that they're going right through your natural defenses, deep into your lungs, and even straight into your bloodstream.
That's crazy.
So that's why, some of these more synthetic sources of contaminants, these ultra-fine particulates can go right past natural defenses. And that's, they're linking those to lung cancer and all kinds of things.
So some of those might be get caught up on your nose hairs and things like that, but not many, right?
Not many when it's that
pretty
small.
Yeah.
A filter, even a lot of HEPA filters, which is a good quality. It's a rating of a filter.
Right.
A lot of these particulates are too small even for that.
That's crazy.
But it's so small, it's hard to wrap your mind around.
Yeah.
I mean, the human vision, I think the limitation is around 44 microns.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so like if you're thinking a hair is 50, 75, somewhere around that. I think a human blood cell is, depending on the type, somewhere between 25 and 6.
Wow.
So we're talking really small things, like a bacteria is 2, and we're talking about less than a micron, 2.5 micron and below is some of the most dangerous particulates. So that's the physical matter.
Yeah. We did a show a while back with, you're probably familiar with Stephanie Seneff. Are you familiar with her?
I'm not sure about her.
Yeah, she's a MIT sort of scientist and researcher, and really sort of blowing the lid on this whole autism connection with glyphosates and screwing up the sulfur transfer cycle and all the stuff that glyphosate apparently does. But she said on our show, which I thought was really interesting, that 10% of fuel is made from genetically modified corn. And so she conjectures that there's now glyphosate in the air coming out of the exhaust of these cars. And now I'm thinking like it's in the ground, it's in the water, now it's in the air. So
there's a lot that comes out of that diesel exhaust.
Crazy, right?
I mean, just near us here in Long Beach, they call it the diesel highway of death. I think
I remember you said that. Yeah.
And I mean, it's severe. The impacts that it's having, just asthma rates, on schools along the highway.
Yeah.
It's a high concentration of diesel trucks. And so, there's a lot that we're learning. So understanding outdoor air, how it fluctuates, how we're exposing ourselves to it. In many cases, it's going to be more beneficial than our indoor air, but it's not as simple as just,
Yeah, I mean, it's all like environment, context, where you live, time of day, time of year,
Yep.
you know, whether or not you have a lot of vegetation, because you figure, you know, you're going outside and you might have massive amounts of chemtrails, chemicals falling from the sky, exhaust. So just going outside isn't like the tried and true rule for everybody.
I mean, you know, we have people a lot of times will ask, you know, with our air purifiers, should I open the windows or not? And the answer is
depends.
Maybe.
Yeah, depends. Where are you?
Right. When is it? What time is it? What's going on? And as much as we can get people to start thinking along those lines, not to like freak you out or anything, but is now a good time to open my windows? And it might very well be. You might live on the ocean and it's great. But understanding kind of the factors involved with that can help us all make practical, better decisions.
Yeah. So I guess that would depend, right? So let's talk a little bit about, I think it would be really practical. We'll talk like the different sort of technologies in some of your products, which I think will be cool. But let's talk about some things that people can do to remediate or mitigate the damaging effects of indoor air quality. Because is it true that the indoor air, I guess everything is nuanced, right? Because I read these studies that say like indoor air quality is, you know, 10 times more toxic than outdoor, but it depends where you are, right?
Totally, yeah. So the CDC measurement that is quoted often is 2 to 5 times worse.
2 to 5 times worse. But that's
how bad is your outside air where you live?
You could be in Montana,
yes,
right, and be
so
pretty good.
It's a bit oversimplified, and you know, I think our industry in general does their best probably to simplify a very complex subject, but that is in turn, I think, detrimental in many cases, because you know, someone's indoor air down your street might be very different than your own.
Well, I mean, you figure just the house construction is different, but then
age of the homes, what they are made out of, has there been any leaks in the past,
or what they brought into it?
What are you bringing into it? Do you have animals? Do you have like you know, paint that's putting out tons of VOCs?
Right.
You know, what is going on in that environment? What's being trapped in there? Obviously, someone, you know, smoking a cigarette or something, you know, that's producing all kinds of additional contaminants. Many of those are being trapped.
My aunt, my mom is from Australia, and in 2002 I visited my aunt, who was at the time living in New Zealand, and she was basically a chain smoker, just smoked her whole life. And so I remember staying with her, and she would have these yellow streak marks
it's
of just
nicotine
damage. Unreal. And I can't even imagine how many chemicals are.
It's amazing. Yeah, and
I'm surprised I lived.
Yeah, one of the situations that we've been running into, which is it's sad. We have customers that maybe can't afford much, but they're living in a multi-home apartment where someone else is smoking, and that cigarette smoke can penetrate walls, like plumbing, like you name it. Like it is getting into apartments, like you know, the next floors, like down the way.
So it can penetrate.
Oh yeah, I mean, we have people that they can't hardly stay in their home because the floorboards themselves are starting to smell like smoke, or it's coming out of their like kitchen sink because their downstairs neighbor or somebody is smoking.
That's crazy.
And it is very difficult. You
know what amazes me, because our next door neighbors smoke, and they smoke a lot.
Yeah, sure.
And it comes through, and you know what amazes me is it's 2019 and people are still smoking.
It is, yeah.
You know, it's crazy, right?
We all make a lot of bad decisions.
I mean, it's not like people don't know that it's bad now.
Yes,
1960, I get it. You know, you don't know, but you know, it's so that's interesting. I'd never known that it goes through walls. I guess it would take some time though, right, for that to happen.
Yeah, and there's, obviously there's a lot of different things that are being produced. So you've got chemicals, you've got particulates, there's different elements to it. And so some of those are able to go right through like a porous wall eventually.
Okay.
But it is a very damaging, I mean, you get a room that's been smoked in for a while, it's going to take a while to remediate that.
Yeah, think of our next door neighbors. I don't know if they're going to, I don't know if they rent or own that property, but whenever they leave, it's going to take like a massive amount to clean up that place.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I mean, so air quality, you've got all these different factors. It's not just, is it fresh or bad?
Yeah.
Do you have high particulates? Do you have a lot of allergens? Do you have, we work with hospitals. Do you have a lot of dangerous bacteria, or viruses, floating around. What are you doing with it?
So you put some of your machines, hospitals work with you guys, and
so I mean,
they go in there.
Our company focuses on air quality solutions for a lot of industries. So I mean, we work with the tallest building in the world, hospitals, professional sports teams, aerospace, food processing, hospitality, hotels.
Yeah.
So
that's a big one.
It's a big one.
Yeah. Oh man.
There's bad air quality, because with our technology, we're looking at air quality, but also sanitation as well. So sanitation of surfaces.
Right. And that's one thing I want to talk with you about, because that's an interesting sort of side component to
and
your
they're very
products.
connected as well. A lot of these contaminants have some type of surface and airborne aspect to them.
Right.
So there's a lot there, but
wow.
Yeah. In a hotel room, if you think about how often has that light switch been cleaned?
Yeah, right. Or that TV remote.
Yeah, or the surface of the the tub. Yeah, if you look at the studies on it, even the kind of the gotcha local news studies on hotel rooms. It is a little disturbing.
They're going in there with the black light, and
it's a little disturbing.
It's not.
And then you've got cleaning chemicals, deodorizers, high chemical, high kind of allergy triggers. You've got a lot going on there.
Yeah, I would imagine
mold issues, certainly.
Mold, mold. That would be a big one. Yeah, I would imagine that would be a real issue, specifically with people using cleaning products, because there's enough like fire retardant chemicals in the different beds and things like that are off-gassing. And we did a whole show with this guy all about benzene, and he was talking about his wife's cancer and his connection to benzene, and in the glues and particle board and all this stuff, right? But then on top of that, you have people cleaning with chemicals, and so if one of your products were in a room, and let's say someone cleans with I don't want to say any names, but like glass cleaner, or some sort of scrub that you might put around your bathtub that stinks. So some of your products will actually get rid of the smell in there?
Yeah, so something like a VOC is going to be, we use the word VOC. So VOC stands for volatile organic compound. But if you think of that, that's kind of like a chemical compound. You've got carbons and hydrogens. You've got these different molecules bonded together to create a single chemical.
Okay.
And so that chemical is being off-gassed from the cleaning spray, whatever it is.
Okay.
So with our technology, depending on which mode of action is coming into play, so we work with a lot of different modes of action. But it's
what do you mean by modes of action?
So like different technologies are going to be combined together to have different or redundant effects.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So different modes of technology within your system will come together and
Yep.
sort of battle whatever that is.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So with something like a chemical compound produced from a cleaning spray, we're actually going to break that down on a molecular level. So rip the bonds apart and convert something like formaldehyde, which is carbons and hydrogens.
Okay.
And we're going to convert that back into CO2, so carbon dioxide,
okay, right.
and H2O. So kind of breaking it down into its most basic parts, which are perfectly fine for us, but it's when it's in these kind of weird chemical makeups.
Yeah.
It's hard to kind of wrap your mind around these things, but it's a chemical compound that we're then reverting into its basic building blocks.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so we work with hotels. We've done studies where their VOC count might be around like 100 parts per billion before, and then right after they spray, it jumps up to like 800 billion. So
100 parts per billion, then 800 billion.
Yeah, so like in 8x multiple from them spraying.
Okay.
And they're trying to clean the room and kind of get it back into a working order, right? So they're trying to clean it, but while they're cleaning it, they're also producing chemicals that are either irritating for a lot of us, might be harmful for us,
right?
But certainly for someone that's sensitive, is going to go in that room, and it's going to
it's going to really trigger something.
Yeah, you're going to be able to smell it. And one of the things we do talk about is our noses are extremely sophisticated. It's really amazing, how our noses work. But one of the limitations is kind of nose blindness. You become used to what's around you a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that happens all the time,
yeah,
right?
But when you go into a new environment like a hotel room, you're certainly more prone to pick up on the foreign kind of compounds there.
But even then, it lasts for 10 minutes, and then you're used to it, right? It's weird.
That's right, yeah.
And you know it, too. You're like, wow, when I first walked in this room, it was horrible.
Yes, exactly. But
now I'm okay with it.
Yep. So, so with a hotel, something like a VOC would be produced. Yep.
Okay,
and
right.
we would be trying to deal with that as quickly as possible. And with the hotels we work with, we have units that the maid service will carry with them, so that they can remediate the room while they're cleaning.
Okay.
And reduce, any type of, VOC makeup. But we're also encouraging them to use, hypoallergenic, cleaners.
More natural products.
Yep. And when they're using products like ours, either to remediate a room quickly or they actually install it in the room, you don't need as much.
Right. So it's less of a burden on the
exactly. You don't have to
system.
Make up a bunch of you don't have to clean a really dirty air or really dirty surfaces, because we've been doing that the whole time. So
wow.
Yeah, we try to create more hypoallergenic options, in the hotel space. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I imagine you have a lot of applications, not just in the hotel space and the retail space and homes and things, but businesses and large areas, warehouses. I would imagine, because warehouses are super large areas, but also contained as well.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we do struggle with focus as a company, because there's many applications that really need products,
right?
With our technologies, and products that are custom designed for the application,
right?
But we do have to really limit ourselves to focus on the areas that need it the most, and that are most willing to, actually think about it.
Yeah, and care about it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I think about too when I encourage people in different aspects of their health, because a lot of times, I think I was mentioning this at the beginning, where a lot of times people will focus on like the hardest things to change about their health first. Like they'll try to battle these food addictions, and they'll try to cut out carbs, or they'll try to cut out sugar and all this kind of stuff, which is all great, but depending on what the carb and sugar is, obviously, but, that's going to move the needle a little bit.
Sure.
But like you said, we're breathing the equivalent of, Olympic-sized swimming pool every day. That's every single day. And how much of that are actual physical toxins and chemicals that are storing inside of the lungs? And I was reading before the show, like the rise in lung disease is like crazy.
It's significant.
Asthma, COPD, lung cancer, pneumonia, all these types of lung conditions are just on the rise.
Yeah, it's significant.
It's really crazy.
And I think, we're better understanding some of the conditions that have been misdiagnosed as other diseases that are actually environmental related.
Wow.
So, we work with a doctor, completely unaffiliated with us, but Dr. Shoemaker. He's done a lot of research on mold, and he's working with doctors to better diagnose people that might be exhibiting, symptoms related to mold exposure, not from some kind of nerve disease or whatever else the doctors are diagnosing it as. It might just be
environmental
your home has a lot of mold in it, and you're reacting really strongly to that mold.
It's interesting, because I was doing some research on on EMF and what it does to the cell membranes, and it allows, apparently, according to Martin Paul, professor, 1,000 times more calcium into the center of the cell. And then as a result of that, he's kind of cross-linked, I think, 200 different health conditions that relate to that. And it's interesting, because like what you're saying, the same could be the case, where, someone might have some disease or some issue, but really it's just mold in their house. It's so simple.
Could be some kind of environmental exposure.
That's crazy.
And or someone that has a weakened immune system from something else. Now the environmental exposure is that much more significant.
Yeah.
So it's in many cases it's not one thing, right? And certainly our technology is not like a silver bullet approach to anything.
Right.
But your environment and your air, what you're exposing yourself to, is certainly a factor in your overall wellness.
Oh yeah, longevity. I mean, you can't completely duplicate nature, but you can get as close as you can, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what we're trying.
Yeah, trying. We're gonna take a little break right now, and let me try to see if this is gonna work here. Do a little commercial spot, and let's see here. See if our audio will work here. Hope you guys are enjoying the show so far. If you are on YouTube, I'm gonna try to bring up some questions from YouTube, but let's do this real quick and see if we can't get this to play.
This is Xtreme Health Radio, where we're 100% listener supported. Make sure to join the Xtreme Health Academy with thousands of other listeners and get real solutions for your health challenges.
Yeah, guys, if you guys want to check out the Xtreme Health Academy, make sure to do that. And there is a lot of information. We're releasing courses all the time. And if you want to take your health to new levels, make sure to check out the Xtreme Health Academy and check out what Mr. Adam Bergstrom has to say about light. And we're going to, I'll show you some different pieces and different technologies when it comes to light that you may want to check out in order to better enhance your environment.
Remember, visible light is a little bitty spectrum between all the cosmic energy and all the infrared energy. Infrared is invisible, right? You can feel it because red light works on your sympathetic nervous system. It has nothing to do with your parasympathetic nervous system. Red light and the sympathetic nervous system works out of the heart energy. Your parasympathetic nervous system, all brain, and all buttocks, and we're getting the red energy.
So there you go, Mr. Adam Bergstrom. Really, really cool stuff on light and what red light therapy can do. And so here's another clip from a friend of ours who's going to be doing a workshop inside the Academy here pretty soon about eye health, macular degeneration, myopia, glaucoma, all these sorts of issues that are coming into, sort of becoming normal in today's world. And so here's Dr. Sam Byrne, who's a natural ophthalmologist, and he's got a lot of cool things to say.
You've got the optical systems you're looking through, and then, as you say, the screen time. You know, when people use their digital device at night in dim light, the pupils dilate more. And so more of that blue light is going to get in because of the dilated pupil. But they're not using blue blockers, and they're not, doing eye supplements or eating foods that protect their eyes. So this blue light, it's a chaotic, very fast wavelength. It's going to damage the tissue in our eyes, no question about it. It's really critical. The lens of our eye, our original hardware, has a pigment that blocks the damaging blue light. But those plastic lenses that they put in the eye do not have the pigment that blocks the damaging blue light. So when people get the cataract surgery, then they're more susceptible to getting macular degeneration because that blue light can damage the macula. So they need to wear blue blocking lenses and protect their eyes because these plastic lenses leave you wide open to be vulnerable to get the damage from the blue light. We're not sleeping well. We're exposed to all this blue light. So take your pick. There's probably, with all the people you have on your show, you could probably put that together and say, well, these are contributing factors in why our eyes are letting us down.
Yeah.
It's all of the above and more.
Yeah, my friends. So make sure to check out the blue blockers that we have. I'm wearing a pair right now from Mr. Andy Mant from blueblocks.com, and he's got some really, really cool technologies in his store, blueblocks.com. If you go to our store, biochargeme.com, that'll help support the work that we do. It'll help support everything that we have going on. And if you want to see more shows like that, check out our light therapy products over at biochargeme.com. And if you're on Instagram,
You're listening to Xtreme Health Radio, and I hope you're enjoying this show. Please share it with your friends by tagging @Xtreme Health Radio on Instagram. Stay tuned for new shows weekly.
yeah. So David, are you on Instagram? You guys? Not yet?
No.
That's actually cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad for that. I only use Instagram when, just for our show, but I don't really use it for anything else other than that. But if you guys want to follow us on Instagram, that would be cool. That way you get updates on everything we have going on, our shows and all the different things that we put out. So make sure to check us out on Instagram. And so I want to ask you, Dave, about some things that people can do to mitigate the damaging effects of air in their homes or in their workplaces, and some people call it biohacking your home or biohacking your workspace. You know, what are some things people can do, do you think, that aside from getting one of your filters, but I want to talk about that as well, but aside from that, what are some things people can do to bring nature more into their house?
I mean, one of the things we talk about a lot is just reducing the sources of contamination.
Start there, right?
Yeah, so given the option, you know, try to reduce the amount of new VOCs that are coming in. You know, try to address something like a leak or a significant amount of moisture in an area that might be contributing to mold. You know, set up your HVAC system, your AC system, that it's recirculates the air, not necessarily when it's heating or cooling, given the option.
Okay.
You know, to circulate the air a bit more, so it's not just stagnant. You know, just kind of looking at some of those factors. You know, what are you bringing into the home that's creating the problems? Can you reduce that if possible?
Okay.
You know, certainly some plants can be beneficial, you know, as a kind of an additional factor in, you know, reducing, you know, the sources of contamination. So I think those are some of the big ones. And, you know, better understanding your outside air so that you can open the windows in a good, you know, at a good time, and
know
really
when to
get
open
fresh air. Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes I open my window when I'm working at my home office, and I just get wafts of smoke.
Sure. There you go.
Now is not a good time.
That might not be a good time. Yeah, so just, you know, some of those factors, kind of reducing that. I mean, our company doesn't have any specific recommendations on something like a vacuum, but, you know, if you have a poor quality vacuum, you might just be kicking up, you know, the things into the air again versus actually sucking them up. Something like carpet may be a 20-year kind of breeding ground of, you know, built up contaminants. So there's a lot of factors in your home that could be, you know, either harboring contaminants or contributing to more of them.
Okay, so the first step would probably be looking at the areas of your life where you spend the most time, like the office and bedroom would be a place. So you want to make sure to swap out like fire retardants, beds that are non-organic, right?
Sure.
Start there.
There's a lot of problems with bedding, you know, pillows, even how you're cleaning. You know, like washing your sheets, that can be a big source of irritants for sure.
Yeah, I hear what are those called? Dryer.
The dryer sheets.
Dryer sheets. Yeah, those are really.
Yep. A lot of times those
really
are
bad.
Kind of hate to use the word laced, but like laced with, you know, like fragrances that are, you know, chemicals. You know. Yeah. So there's, you know, certainly a lot of sources like that, and.
Okay. And so I would imagine that paints would be something you'd want to look at. I mean, there's paints, a lot of things, right?
There's a lot of options anymore about, you know, say low VOC paints. You know, it is difficult. You're going to buy furniture or something like that. You know, the new furniture smell is also, you know, chemicals. You know,
so and cars as well, right?
Absolutely.
That new car smell.
Chemicals. And so a lot of these imported products have to be treated, you know, with pesticides or, you know, different types of chemicals in order for them to have kind of, you know, quote unquote safe, you know, journey to us. Right. So there are a lot of chemicals that we're exposed to, and certainly, you know, something like mold is going to be, you know, you have a leak. Yeah, you have a leak in your home. That's where it's going to be. That's what's going to be contributing to it. Right. You know, you bring in something like a couch that might be off-gassing some chemicals. But yeah, so different types of sources. And you know, you mentioned, I think earlier, like about a dog. You know,
dander.
Love dogs.
Dander.
You know, and you
do
know,
you have a dog?
My family does. My parents do.
Oh, cool.
So we kind of we're kind of like the dog grandparents. You know, where we get to play with the dog, but not, you know. You know, we've got 2 little kids, so that's enough of a, you know,
that's enough
for us
totally.
right now. But you know, they've got a short-haired dog, which is nice. You might not, and that's, you know, that's just the reality of it. But they're going to be very different in how they contribute to the environment.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and not even counting fleas and parasites.
Certainly.
And things, yeah.
And that's a whole nother level of environmental pests, right?
Right.
You know, there's, you know, dust mites. There's all kinds of, like, you know, little biological creatures that are.
So what about dust? Like, isn't the majority of dust mostly like fungus and, you know, all kinds of chemicals?
I mean, dust can just be human like skin shedding. There's all kinds of sources. Yep. Yeah. So you do need something, you know, whether you're vacuuming it up, you're getting it out of the air, you do need to get rid of these things on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, it's funny how, sometimes you just listen to a podcast or watch a podcast or read a book, and sometimes you only walk away with one thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so far, we've been going for 40 minutes, but I just can't get it out of my head what you mentioned about we breathe the equivalent of Olympic-sized swimming pool. Just that alone, that connected to the rise in lung diseases of all kinds is like really profound.
And what was in that air that you breathe?
Yeah.
Because a lot of that is staying with you.
So I'd imagine, if someone's going to be looking at improving their indoor air quality, you might want to bring in some essential oils, get rid of the offenders, like you said. So work on getting rid of all these things, repainting maybe with some organic paint, bringing in nature as much as you can.
Looking at what you're cleaning with, what you're washing your hands with, what you're washing your clothes with.
Right.
And looking at those products.
Fumigating your dogs before they come in, obviously.
There's a kind of a lot you can do with, what you do have and that you are dealing with. You can't necessarily get rid of the dog, right? That's not what we're saying. You can't get rid of your kids. You can't get rid of yourself. There are going to be sources of contaminants.
Things you can,
trying to mitigate that and be smart. And certainly a lot of this can cost a lot of money. So you do have to be practical too. We can't all just afford,
spend $10,000 mitigating their house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we know how many chemicals, have they done studies? You know how you mentioned that they say the indoor air quality is 2 to 5 times more damaging than outdoor air quality. Have they done any studies that you're aware of how many chemicals are in the average house or the houses they studied?
Most often they're using a single benchmark for a lot of those claims, which is maybe realistic from a study standpoint, but not very helpful from a really practical standpoint.
You can't extrapolate that.
Yeah, and the technologies to really measure every chemical in the air is very expensive.
Is it?
You can use these kind of vacuum chamber cylinders. They're like a metal cylinder, and essentially you trap the air in the cylinder, and then you take it to a lab, and they actually analyze the air in a lab. But a single sample costs somewhere around $500. Just like a single point of data of your air.
Oh, just one component of the sample?
Well, no, like a single instance of the air. You can kind of program the pumps to delay, it takes a little puff every hour or something like that.
Right.
But it's a single point of data, and then they'll analyze you had this much of benzene or whatever it is.
It's almost like an air biopsy or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a kind of that single moment you're taking like a sliver of air.
That's even challenging as well because you could do it in different rooms at different times.
Very different. Yep.
Yeah.
And when we look about at air quality outside, one of the problems is the air quality monitor that you're looking at might be a single point of data on a mountain, a single weather station for the entire city.
Okay.
And that does not necessarily apply to the off-ramp of the freeway near your home, right?
Right.
So it's oftentimes a single point of data, which could be very, very different than the area outside of your house where there was just a wildfire.
Yeah, and wildfires is another issue. I didn't think about that.
Wildfires is a big one. Yeah,
I bet.
Yeah, here in California for us.
Yeah.
We had customers in San Francisco during the wildfires there, and it was the worst air quality in the world. It was worse than Beijing.
Really?
Because of the wildfires. Because you're burning up all that stuff.
And where's that going?
Yeah, in the air.
In the air, in people's homes, in their lungs.
Yeah. So those are very serious when it comes to air quality.
Is Beijing the worst, or Mexico City?
Beijing is the one that I hear quoted most often as the worst.
Okay.
We're actually working on a kind of a partnership with a company called Breezometer, and they're using a variety of factors to get a little bit more, local data on air quality.
Okay.
So not just, a big weathering station, but, what's the temperature, what's the traffic in that area, a lot of layered factors.
Yeah.
And so you can go on to, that you can see some of the more live data. And so all these cities, they're going to change a lot, over the day, over the seasons. But, Beijing is the one I hear the most quoted as possibly the worst. But sadly, there's quite a few contenders.
Gosh, yeah, it's just it all comes down to population density, doesn't it? There's just so many people.
Yeah, you've got industrial sources, certainly traffic sources, human, weather sources. Like, here in LA, we've dealt with, you've got a mountain range that traps, some of that.
Right.
And you kind of get that kind of the LA kind of smog gloom, that's kind of trapped by the mountains there and the ocean. So there's a lot of even terrain, factors to it. Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I imagine it's so challenging for people, because you have people, I'm thinking in hospitals or old folks homes where they are kind of stuck in a building and they can't fix that.
Yeah, no, it's significant. And thankfully, I think a lot of our cities have made some progress in that regards. I mean, even growing up, I remember going to, I guess it was Riverside. Raging Waters was like a water park.
Yeah.
I just remember distinctly, you come home from a day at Raging Waters and your throat and your lungs hurt.
I remember that. I remember that. Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, that's how severe. But sadly, that is the kind of air that a lot of people do have to deal with still.
Yeah.
And that, when it's more severe like that, you can, I guess, experience it a bit more. But
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's my understanding that some of your products, like I want to get into sort of the different models, and I'm going to bring some of them up.
Oh, sure.
On the show here, but it's my understanding that you're some air purifiers will just suck air in, but some of your products are actually emitting particles, right?
Yep. So not particles, but yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah.
So we have different technologies that we use. The conventional air purifier that you're going to think of is just a mediocre mesh filter of some sort. So you've got like a physical barrier that's porous.
Okay.
So the air is supposed to go through and the bad stuff is supposed to be kind of stay behind.
Okay.
It's kind of like a vacuum for your air.
Okay.
Most store-bought air purifiers are going to be very inefficient as far as a filter, and those filters themselves may have no impact at all on a lot of aspects of air quality. So if you think about, like the PM 2.5 we were talking about earlier, that might be so small that it goes right through a filter. There's no impact. Or something like a virus is even smaller. And that's
even smaller than 2.5.
Yeah, I mean, you somewhere around, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but 0.004 microns.
Whoa.
I might be off on that, but it's significantly smaller than 1 micron. And we're talking 2.5. And there's definitely a range for different types of viruses, but it's going to be smaller than a single micron. So very, very small. Bacteria is, I believe, somewhere around 2 microns, so it's super small too.
Even
but viruses are way smaller. So a lot of filters, they're not even going to pretend or claim or anything to have any impact on something like that. And then something like a chemical, most filters are going to have no impact on it.
Really?
So a physical HEPA filter, it does nothing. It doesn't even claim to trap a chemical. The carbon filters, a good quality activated carbon filter will have an absorption, kind of aspect when it comes to something like a VOC.
Okay.
But a lot of filters are not going to have anything.
Is that because they're not set up for that, or they're too small? But chemicals would be bigger, right?
Like a single formaldehyde compound is going to be extremely small.
How small would that be?
I should know that, but I don't.
Yeah.
I would say that's around the virus side.
Really?
I would have to get back to you. It's been a while since I looked at how big a single compound would be.
So still maybe around a micron or less.
No HEPA filter on Earth is even claiming to trap any VOCs, if that kind of puts it in perspective.
And yours can do this?
Yeah, so ours is going to do different modes of action. So,
Okay.
I'll kind of break that down a little bit.
Yeah.
But just to kind of frame it, most filters are going to be kind of acting like a vacuum for your air. You're trying to pump in, as much as you can and trap as much as you can. But many of them don't do anything beyond that. And the more you use it, the worse it gets. And that filter itself can become a breeding ground for something like mold.
Okay.
So you trap a mold spore. You're not doing anything to it. And now you're just feeding it with all this other biological matter, and just kind of grows on your filter and
wow. So the
continues to
mold
propagate.
will proliferate and grow.
Yeah, it could.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so I mean, we talked to people with mold problems, and they've got some a decent quality HEPA filter or something, but they haven't changed it, and it's expensive, so they've kind of let it linger on. Well,
right.
It might be good to turn that off until you can get a new filter.
Yeah, so it's really
Right.
important to make sure that those filters get changed.
Yep. So
Got to do it.
Yeah, so to kind of break down, so we have, we don't believe in one size fits all when it comes to air purification.
Okay.
Either on the technology side or the product side. About half of our company deals only with HVAC installed products.
Okay.
So there's a lot of varieties. We deal with a lot of commercial applications as well. But our proprietary technologies kind of break down into 2 types. So we've got polar ionization, which is mimicking kind of the ionization that would happen near the ocean.
Okay.
So you're splitting water vapor, so H2O, so hydrogens and oxygens.
Okay.
So you're splitting that into its components, the ions.
Okay.
So it's ionized hydrogen, ionized oxygen.
Okay.
And those ions are able to deal with different contaminants, and then they form back together into H2O. So it kind of splits it. It interacts with the
environment,
contaminants, and then goes back together. So
do they sort of
cycle.
gather up the contaminants and attract them to themselves, and then go back into their components?
Yeah. So again, I wish this was a little bit more simple, but the contaminants are all kinds of different types, like we've been talking about.
Right.
So something like a PM2.5, you've got a super small diesel, particulate. It's a physical piece of something, and it's super tiny, and it's floating around your air. It might be too tiny for a HEPA filter. So that ion, the positive ion or negative ion, is going to be giving it a charge. It's like a positive or negative charge.
Okay.
And then that's going to help it stick to its kind of, its brother, particle.
Right.
And so they stick together until they get big enough to get trapped by a filter, or they get weighted out of the air. So with something like a particle, we're going to be looking at how can we get that thing bigger so that it's not so dangerous. That's when it's super small. That's what we're breathing deep into our lungs.
Yeah, not good.
So you're getting it bigger so that it can get trapped by a filter or get out of the air. But then you look at something like mold, that ion is going to be actually killing the mold. So through oxidation, through the natural processes that take place outside, it's actually negating the mold itself, and then any physical matter it's getting out.
So is the mold particle... So once it kills or deactivates the ability for the mold spore to replicate in the air, does it just fall to the ground or get clumped together, like you said, to be big enough to be caught by the filter and sucked back in?
Yeah, both. All those things. And so with mold is an interesting one because there's a lot of factors to it. So the mold is actually growing on a surface. So those ions, and we've got other technologies we'll get to, but those positive negative ions will actually be killing the mold on the surface, disrupting the RNA and DNA of the mold on the surface itself.
Okay.
So it's not wanting to grow.
Okay.
That mold is also putting out mycotoxins, which are chemicals.
Okay.
So those toxins are... they don't really understand why the mold is doing it. Maybe to make an environment that's better for the mold. Maybe to harm the hosts, us.
Maybe to
it's a
kill us all.
lot of weird stuff. And they produce all these different toxins that have different effects on us. So those toxins are chemicals. So with those chemicals, that positive hydrogen or negative oxygen is actually going to want to rip that chemical apart into CO2 or H2. So it's wanting to break it down. So
it disables the mold spore itself.
Killing
and
the mold. Yeah, killing the mold on the surface. The mold is producing toxins and spores. The spores are kind of like, I think of it more like a dandelion or something. It's floating around to like find a new home.
Okay.
And so that spore is off to, colonize a new place.
And then your ionization process will kill those spores.
Killing the spores. And then another factor beyond that is, say, once you kill that mold cell, it might be really small. Dead mold is still a problem. And so then it's going to be getting that physical dead mold out of the air as well.
So does it suck it back into its filter?
So we have different products. Some have a physical filter. You can couple our products with a physical filter. You don't necessarily have to. With something like polar ionization, we've shown 97% reductions of airborne mold with no filtration at all.
Wait, say that again, 99% reduction?
So like one study that I was in Australia, like a 2-bedroom apartment, I believe is what it was. And they had visible black mold, like really bad situation. All they did was install a device of ours that has polar ionization in the HVAC. So like the AC unit. Yeah. They closed up all the doors, all the windows, and left it for 2 weeks. And so that mold would just be growing like crazy and just loving it, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
But with the polar ionization in there, no filters at all. That product has no filters for life at all, anything. It reduced 97% of the airborne mold. Wow. In 2 weeks. In an environment where the mold would normally be breeding like crazy. Because it was closed in, closed, right? Dark, no filtration. Wow. Just polar ionization. So in that case, it's going to be killing it. So it's trying to stop the source. Okay. And then getting rid of everything in the air. The toxins, the spores, the dead mold. And in that case, most likely it was just dropping out of the air. So all the dead particles, and then you'd have to vacuum it up.
Okay, so
you want to stop the source so it's not producing more mold, and then you're wanting to get out of all the things that are dangerous in the air
and the
that are already
mycotoxins
there.
as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the mold spores, which your machine would work on.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of factors to it. So if you put a HEPA filter in there, it's going to be trying to trap as many spores as it can, as quick as it can, but it's not dealing with the source at all. It's also not, in many cases, killing the mold at all. So it's just growing on the filter too, and it can't even deal with some of the finer particulates too. So that would be polar ionization.
Okay.
I would contrast that with negative ionization.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so negative ionization, it's been around for a long time. You know, I heard one scientist, he could make a shower head into a negative ionizer. It's so easy.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know how that works, but
I know, that's what I was thinking too.
But what we're looking at in general, again, is natural processes inside like they are outside.
Okay. Right.
A lot of these devices with the negative ions are producing a really high concentration of negative ions in order to have effect. So that might be the only thing it does. The problem with that is when you're only producing negative ions, O negative, oxygen, O negative is going to bond to itself. So O negative, O2, oxygen, O3, ozone. So you have a cascading reaction, and ionic breeze was, I think, the most notable. They lost a huge lawsuit because they were making claims that were, in some ways accurate in a lab, but not accurate in a room, because the ions would bond together so quickly that it wouldn't actually be affecting the air quality of the room. It would just be creating static, and all the particulates would stick to the wall next to the unit. So it just kind of created this little black wall behind the unit and wasn't actually affecting the air.
Interesting.
Yeah, so with ours, we're splitting the water into really high concentrations of both negative and positive.
Okay.
And so they're not binding together, and they're able to actually travel great distances. So we have units that all it has is that technology, and it will install in the HVAC and cover thousands of square feet.
Oh,
so it can travel great distances and then bind back together and be very effective. So
what if someone doesn't have an HVAC system, or they don't have any kind of conduit like that, and they're just kind of in a 2-3 bedroom apartment?
Yeah, I just kind of use that as an example. So the other half of our company is products that are just going to install on the wall.
Okay.
So kind of more in kind of what you would think of as an air purifier, just kind of plug into the wall.
Yeah.
So we have a bunch of products like that. And we have products, we just released our mold guard is what we called it.
Yeah.
It just fits right into an outlet, only has our polar ionization, has a washable pre-filter. Our goal with that was, how can we sanitize small areas as affordably as possible?
Okay.
And so it has no ongoing maintenance at all, no replacement parts for life, and yet it can purify the air and sanitize surfaces in 100 square feet.
Interesting.
So just kind of making it as simple as possible. So that is our polar ionization. Our other technology is APCO, which is advanced hydrated photocatalytic oxidation.
Jeez, easy for you to say. Say that again. Advanced.
I know it's a mouthful. I mean, our company's a bunch of engineers.
A bunch of science nerds.
Yeah, exactly. But so advanced hydrated photocatalytic oxidation.
Oh man.
So photocatalytic oxidation. PCO is the base technology, and that was developed by NASA, looking specifically at VOC reduction on future deep space missions.
Okay.
So if you think about a space shuttle, it's a very difficult air quality situation.
I imagine.
Because you have to keep using that same air.
Right.
And you can't bring a bunch of filters up with you.
Yeah.
You can't just dump them into space or whatever.
Yeah,
and, So you're kind of stuck with this air. You got to keep dealing with it.
Okay.
And so they developed PCO, specifically looking at ethylene gas. Ethylene is produced as you grow some produce.
Okay.
And so if you're going to be able to grow, like say tomatoes, on your way to Mars or wherever.
Yeah, wherever
you
you're
got to
headed.
find ways to deal with, these, off-gassing of natural, VOCs.
Yeah.
And so they developed PCO. PCO is just mimicking what happens when sunlight in our atmosphere reacts with the minerals in our atmosphere.
Okay.
And so it creates a catalytic reaction. And that catalytic reaction produces hydroxyl radicals on the surface of the mineral.
Okay.
That is very oxidative.
Okay.
It's considered kind of the detergent of our atmosphere. So we kind of talked about natural processes earlier.
Mm-hmm.
As those chemicals that we're producing go up to our troposphere, this is the process that's purifying it.
Interesting.
And so they mimicked that for inside the space station, and then we commercialized it about 15 years ago, and added some hydrating elements and added different minerals. Originally, it was just titanium dioxide. We've added 5 others, and I don't know if we want to get into all that, but it gets pretty complicated pretty fast. But so with that one's going to be the APCO is going to be very effective against chemicals.
Okay.
So VOCs, odors are typically VOCs.
Okay.
And so that's going to be breaking it down. So it's using germicidal UV light. So the sunlight itself, which is effective against a lot of these things.
Right.
It's going to be reacting with a metal catalyst, producing hydroxyl radicals.
Okay.
And then that kind of creates a chain reaction of catalytic reactions that are breaking down molecules at their most basic form.
And then
after killing all biologicals, so viruses, bacteria,
kills all that stuff.
Yep. So those are our 2 main technologies. Some of our products have both, some have one or the other.
Okay.
And then we'll layer those on with kind of the best of the best kind of industry technologies.
Okay.
So H14 HEPA in our iAdapt series, we'll use pre-filters, carbon.
Wow.
So different situations are going to require different kind of combinations of those.
Right.
And there's some pros and cons with both, but we're trying to find the best solutions, the most practical solutions for the kind of different situations.
So if someone were just like living in a standard 2-bedroom condo or a 3-bedroom home, maybe some people might have a 2-story, so there's that issue as well.
Sure.
So I'm going to bring up on the video. I just found out we're not streaming for some reason. We're not live.
Oh no,
bummer. But I'll post it to YouTube after.
That's fine.
But I'm like, where is everybody? Okay, so I'm going to bring up on the video version now some of the products that we carry at biochargeme.com of your products. And I want to ask you about some of these things in relationship to, like, I'm sure people can talk with you, right? And tell you what they're looking for and you guide them.
We try to make ourselves as available as possible to have those conversations, because it is, again, not one size fits all.
It's a lot of research.
It can be complicated. It can be confusing.
Yeah.
We wish it was just like, here's our one product and
there you go.
Perfect for everybody.
Yeah. It's like, here's your toothbrush or something.
Much simpler, but that's just not the case. And you also have to balance the ideal with what's practical, because, there might be 2 families. They each have the same situation. They can't necessarily afford the same things.
Right.
And that's just the reality.
Yeah.
And so we have to find solutions that are going to provide really excellent coverage in a way that's affordable.
Yeah.
In a way that can actually be practical.
So we have a couple minutes left. Unfortunately, I have to leave in about 10 minutes probably. But let me go through some of your products. So you have here, we'll kind of go rapid fire a little bit. The air quality test kit that you guys sell for, $14, or I think last time I checked, is something people can do to test their air quality, right?
Yeah. So with that's a Petri dish test kit. And what that's looking at is your biological contaminants.
Okay.
It's a good way to let you have a more interactive experience with your air.
Okay.
So you could have, not to, dissuade you from it, but you could have super high concentrations of particulates and it would never know. You could have super high concentrations of chemicals and it would never know. But what that kit is looking at is how much mold is in your air? How much bacteria is in your air?
Okay.
Like, what are the viruses in your air? And it can kind of give you a kind of a physical manifestation of those things that you're breathing, because it's going to incubate those things in a dish. You're gonna kind of put it in a closed drawer, and you're going to look at it after 4 or 5 days, and you can see the mold actually grow until you can see it.
I know.
You can see the bacteria actually grow until you can see it. So it allows you to kind of make tangible something that's intangible, so that you can make some wise decisions. And we've had people that I don't think they even bought our products afterwards, but we love to hear that they took the test, they discovered they had tons of mold, and now they realized, oh, maybe that's why I feel so bad.
Right.
And then, they remediated their home or whatever it was. So you're able to kind of make some better decisions then as you're educating yourself on your air.
Yeah, and as things continue to learn and
we just don't want to oversell it, because like all these kits, all these test kits, they're only kind of give you a little limited snapshot of what's actually in your air.
Yeah, I imagine you can't test for everything. Like you said before, some of these testings could be like thousands of dollars.
You could spend $20,000 easily
just on
and
testing.
not know.
And still not know.
Not know everything.
So here, next one, we got the Air Angel. Now this is cool because it's a mobile air sanitizer, right?
Yeah. We brought that out specifically with people that are spending a lot of time in their cars or on the go, like in
Traveling.
hotel rooms a lot.
Okay.
And so that one is featuring our APCO technology.
Okay.
It has some ionization, not full polar ionization, but so it's got our APCO technology. So you take that into a hotel room that's been smoked in or recently cleaned.
Yeah.
It's going to be purifying that as quickly as possible. And so that's
Great for traveling.
Yeah, it's going to be killing, something like a bacteria or mold on the surface of a bathroom
or door handle or something.
Door handle. It's going to be getting rid of, VOCs from cleaning chemicals, bacteria, mold in your air. So that's kind of a more essential on the go, small areas. I've used one of those in my youngest bedroom. So, I mean, it's for smaller areas, about 250 square feet.
Okay, like a little hotel room or something, Airbnb or something.
Exactly.
That's really cool. All right, cool. So a couple more products I'd like to ask you about. You talked a little bit about the mold guard, I think, which was cool. And
we brought that out a lot with a lot of biohackers in mind. Specifically. So that one, I'll start with the weaknesses, because we like to be super upfront. That one's going to be weaker against chemicals and odors.
Okay.
But what it's going to really excel at is all the biological contaminants and the things that are really dangerous for you. So that'd be the very fine, ultra-fine particulates.
Small.
And, we sell for $150, covers 100 square feet. You have no replacement parts for life. You've got a washable pre-filter. So it kind of gives you that essential coverage for smaller areas.
Okay.
Because, you mentioned a little bit earlier, say you've got a 2-bedroom home. We have units that can cover, 10,000 square feet. But if you have a 2-bedroom home and you close your bedroom door all the time, it's not going to deal with the air in your bedroom. So you need a smaller unit for those areas that are more isolated.
Right.
And so a unit like that can provide ongoing safety coverage, killing mold, killing bacteria, killing viruses, getting rid of the PM 2.5 on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, so that's also good to have too.
Yeah.
Let me bring up a couple of the other products here I think are really interesting. And now these are getting into sort of more of the higher end things. So now you have start with the hypoallergenic G3 series. Yeah,
absolutely. So this is our best-selling residential products.
I would think so.
We've had them for some time now. We've improved them many times over the years. But that has both our APCO technology and polar ionization.
Okay.
It has no filtration at all. And so that is an extremely effective and efficient unit for most every home. So you can have a single one of those units, like the AO1000 G3. We have many customers. That's all they'll have in their entire home of about 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
And actually, a story I heard from a customer from San Francisco, which we were talking about. She just had one of those on each floor of her home, had no smoke at all in her entire home. But if you went outside, you had to wear like a breathing mask. Like her neighbors were having to kind of, go stay in hotels, leave the area.
Oxygen tank.
Just a single one of those on each floor of her home. Kept out all the smoke, VOCs. So very large coverage.
Okay.
If you look at most air purifiers, and if they actually say, which most don't, but they might cover a small room, those can cover, 1,000 square feet, 3,000 square feet.
Oh,
so
really?
Large areas. And the only maintenance you have is every 2 to 3 years you change out the APCO cell.
Okay.
So extremely, just leave it and forget it kind of practical technology.
Right.
And it's going to provide efficacy that's plenty good enough for most every residential situation.
That's really cool.
And when we're looking at a home, like if any of your listeners wanted to call and talk to us, talk to me, we're going to be looking at a couple factors. One is airflow. So not just your square footage, but what is the airflow? Is it a 2-bedroom home? Like, is it 2 stories? Do you have a basement? Whatever.
Do you shut off parts of the house?
Do you shut off parts of the house? So looking at airflows, and then we're going to look at contamination levels.
Okay.
So, do you have mold? Do you have known mold? Do you have dogs? Do you smoke? You probably don't, but what are those sources in there? Is there anything that's unusual?
Yeah.
Because we're looking more at the levels of contamination versus the size of the space.
Okay.
So we're dealing with contaminants, not square footage.
Okay.
The square footage just gives us an idea of like an average home.
Okay.
And then the last thing we're going to look at is sensitivities. Is anyone in your home especially sensitive to something?
Okay.
Do they have some type of health issue? Known allergen? Is something going on?
Right.
That's going to help us steer you towards the right products.
Okay.
And we're going to give you options that are, this is the most ideal if you could do this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd recommend at least doing this,
Okay.
whatever it is.
So you give like levels to things people can do.
And something like an
Which is
AO
great.
1000 G3, we have a lot of customers that they're going to take that unit, put it in a common area, and never move it again.
Yeah.
And then we'll have others that they rotate it on an ongoing basis. They'll move it to a bedroom, they'll move it to a bathroom, and they'll be a little bit more, I guess, proactive with it.
So if I were going to get the AO 1000 G3 for, let's say, my bedroom, would I want to also get something else for the bedroom, or would that be enough, do you think?
You wouldn't need anything else for the bedroom.
Okay.
No.
That would be it.
Yeah, so the only other thing that we'll look at is, so on the next level up is our iAdapt series. So that's going to combine everything that's in a G3 with the highest grade of HEPA and carbon filtration.
Is that the AO 3000?
No, that's just a larger version of the G3. So we're going to be looking at the iAdapt series.
Okay. I don't think I have that one in our store, but you can still click through.
That one's it's pretty new. It's
Okay.
a new product line. So we've layered on the physical filtration, an air quality sensor, and some more smart features onto the G3.
Okay.
And so what that does is provide super quick removal.
Okay.
So every 20 minutes, everything is gone essentially in the space.
Wow.
So someone that was really symptomatic, in you're talking about your bedroom.
You want to turn something around quick.
I might steer you towards an iAdapt. I did that with my eldest son. We had a huge pollen bloom earlier this year.
Yeah.
He was really struggling during his nap times, and so we got a iAdapt small in his room. Gets rid of everything pretty much immediately.
Really?
So when you're very symptomatic,
Okay.
something like that speeds up the removal. Doesn't necessarily change the equation other than the speed.
Just as, yeah.
And so when you're looking at someone that's really symptomatic, something's going on, that's really helpful. And then that unit also has some additional features when it comes to kind of control. So you do have an air quality sensor, and you can have like a timer. You've got different modes. You've got like a dark mode. So, at night, if you're light sensitive, that unit's a little bit better.
Okay.
The G3 series can cover large areas. So
Okay.
it doesn't need to be in your bedroom, but it does have an internal glow from the APCO technology.
Okay.
So in the biohacking space, I know that's important to consider, myself
Right.
included, as
Right.
light sensitive.
The blue light and all that.
So you don't need it next to your bed in order for a G3 to be effective.
Okay.
But you could have an iAdapt next to your bed and turn on dark mode, turn off the APCO, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's kind of different levels of darkness.
Yeah.
You
Unless
can get
the
complete
internal,
darkness.
if the internal lights, it's interesting because a lot of technologies like this or products like this will use as sort of a base light color is they'll have a blue light as the base light color instead of they just switch to red, it would be cool.
So
It'd be
ours
a lot
has
better.
to use a specific wavelength, the germicidal UV light,
Okay.
for the efficacy.
I see.
So there is an aspect of that, but that same unit you could have down the hallway, and it's covering your bedroom.
Yeah.
And we have some customers that they're going to turn off everything, whether it's EMF sensitivity, whatever it is.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
anything close to them, they're going to get rid of completely at night, and that's
Yeah.
fine. We want you to have as much of a pure baseline as possible.
Yeah.
When you're going to turn those things off, and that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have some. I mean, there's the good thing is that in today's world, like there's solutions for everything. So, there's really cool companies out there producing now these. They're in our store. These junk light dots things you can put over lights that have little sensors on
Yes,
them or whatever. And you can just mitigate the blue, and you're
Yep.
good to go. So,
Absolutely.
okay, so last product I want to ask you about is the AO 3000 XG3 model.
Yep.
Because that looks like, at least from what we have on our store, more the top of the line.
So that has the most horsepower per se of the G3 series.
Okay.
So that's going to be putting out more catalytic molecules than the other ones.
Okay.
And so that is still for 3,000 square feet. So we've got the AO 3000 and the AO 3000 Xtreme.
Now, would this be 3,000 square feet single story, or does that matter?
It does matter, yeah. So that
does matter.
gets back to the airflow.
Okay.
In general, we're going to recommend one per floor.
One per, whatever you buy, one per floor.
In general, yes.
Okay.
We definitely have customers that they might have more of an open floor plan, and they can get by with one unit on, say, like the upper story, near the stairs or something, but that's not ideal. Yeah. Not ideal at all. But the Xtreme is going to be for a higher contaminant situation.
Okay.
You've got mold, you've got smoke, and you've got something going on. You need more horsepower.
Okay.
But we're not going to tell you put a 3000 Xtreme in a small bedroom. That's not what it's designed for. It's designed for, that's high contaminant. It's really a light commercial unit.
Really? Mm-hmm. But if you wanted to go all in, could you just do it for your bedroom?
So we're not going to recommend going that way because we want natural, like a natural balance.
Okay.
So you could overdo it.
Oh, I see.
And we don't want that either.
Right.
Yeah. So the iAdapt would be a more premium way to go for a bedroom.
Okay.
So instead of trying to superpower the G3s for the space,
right,
the iAdapt is going to give that quicker removal with the additional technologies.
Okay.
Yeah. The downside to consider on the iAdapts is it's for smaller areas comparatively.
Okay. And
you do have ongoing filters to change.
Okay.
It's not a huge factor like the one I've used. We brought it out at the end of last year, so it's still pretty new. But I used one probably for 7-8 months 24/7 without changing the filters, and the filters aren't super expensive. But we want people to consider that because that is an ongoing cost versus something like the G3 it will be more affordable up front. You have less ongoing costs.
Yeah.
But you don't get quite the speed and some of the features.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's
some different.
Yeah, it all depends on what your
nuances there, right?
Yeah, what the airflow is, what your goals are, what your sensitivities are, how big your house is.
Yep, and like how dynamic the environment is. Like, so we work with medical centers, wellness centers, whatever it is. You might have patients coming and going, and so having something that's very quick at removing.
Yeah, maybe like a
really
lobby
important.
or a waiting room for a yoga studio or something.
Yeah, I mean, I personally kind of have a simmering mission that if we could only get an iAdapt in every waiting room of every type,
right,
on Earth, what an impact that would have.
Yeah,
because like I had, I've been relatively sheltered, but one of the worst parenting experiences I've ever had was having to take my son to Children's Hospital, emergency room. He had something crazy going on, some kind of reaction. He looked horrible. It looked like he had the plague. And like we got there at the Children's Hospital, just having a horrible day, obviously.
Yeah.
You're so concerned and everything. And we sit down. He could have I don't know. He could have the plague. Like he just looks
all
covered,
splotchy or something.
Yes, covered with like a crazy reaction. And we're sitting there with probably 60 other people.
Oh yeah.
Who knows what they have? Who knows what he has?
Right. Doors always opening. Right?
And I can almost guarantee you nothing in that room that's even attempting to purify the air.
Yeah.
Like
all those people breathing.
They're going to be recirculating the air a lot of times in a hospital.
Yeah.
But that's basically the only thing they're doing. They're trying to introduce as much pure air as possible.
Yeah.
Which is expensive, but that's not actually purifying the air.
Yeah, I know. And especially, with the hospital itself, with concerns for MRSA and things like that.
Oh, yeah. And, we could talk about it just because it is relevant. But, if you look at a hospital room, someone that has C. diff, they might clean that room once a day and kind of manually clean the high touch areas. So that'd be like door handles, things like that, with some type of chemical. And then after the patient leaves, maybe after 7 days, they're going to try to do some kind of sterilization technology, like fog it, some kind of like high powered germicide UV light to kind of create a single instance of clean.
Just in that one room.
Just in that one room at the one moment of time with no patients. But in the intern, you've had someone with C. diff that entire time. You've had all the nurses, all the doctors, everyone coming and going. They're exposed to everybody else from their neighbors, everything.
And they're carrying
There's
things.
Nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's dealing with these things on an ongoing basis. And that's part of why it's somewhere around 5% of people that go into a hospital get an infection from the hospital.
Yeah.
It's called an HAI.
Yeah.
And we would like to see that reduced.
Yeah, that would be nice, right? And hospitals are coming on board a little bit with your technology.
They are, yeah. Most of the time, we're having more luck, honestly, kind of sneaking the back door through the HVAC than through the actual infection control people. Yeah. Because they're a little bit stuck in their ways. Yeah. And it's sad. Yeah. But if you do get one of our products and you do go to a hospital, you should probably bring it with you. Yeah. So
with if you do, like, let's say someone works for a hospital, could they bring that Air Angel with them and keep it on their person, do you think?
Definitely. I mean, a lot of people bring their own, like an Air Angel, it does have to be plugged in. So either into a car or into a wall outlet. Okay. So it's not necessarily a portable unit. And we have looked into that. Frankly, it's lower down on our list, but we also don't want to put out a product that isn't producing the efficacy that we're claiming.
Right.
And if you think about how dynamic it would be to carry a product with you into a room and get protection, sure, we could definitely improve that, but it would probably be a pretty high cost item to really give you efficacy, because there's products on the market that they're not doing a lot for you.
Yeah, and imagine the applications too of traveling. Like,
oh, absolutely.
I mean, imagine if you had something portable wearing with you traveling, that would be great. But then also, if every plane just had one of your units inside.
That's definitely on our list.
I'm sure you've thought of that.
I'm working in the facilities of one of the largest manufacturers of airplanes,
Really?
but not in airplanes themselves. And if you look at the simulations of what happens to a sneeze on an airplane, how many times it gets recirculated, is disturbing, to say the least.
Right.
But it is an extremely common experience for travelers to get off a plane and feel worse.
I imagine. Yeah.
You know, whether they've got a tickle in their throat, you know, congestion, whatever it is, that there's definitely a lot of air quality issues that we would like to help with. But it's just a little bit more complicated to get past all the bureaucracy.
Yeah, with hospitals and airplanes. I mean, that would be massive, but you got to get through a lot of red tape on that.
Yeah, I mean, like the iAdapt, this product we just tested last year, this is a residential product, essentially. It removed 99.998, I want to say, % of H1N1 airborne flu in 20 minutes. And yet, pretty much no hospital on earth is going to have any product, let alone ours, doing anything to that air and say like a waiting room, other than introducing fresh air.
Yeah, opening windows or something.
Yeah.
Well, David, thanks so much for being on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, this is really
chat about these things. And you know, we are available to. I mean, there's certainly so many topics we haven't covered.
Oh my gosh.
So many individual questions that you know people must have. You know, we love talking to people and trying to be as transparent as possible. Try to make a complex conversation at least understandable.
Yeah.
And you know, we're going to try to be as frank with you as possible on what might be a good fit or what might not be.
I mean, that's part of what we like to do, is feature good people on the show doing great things. And you know, it's not always possible to talk to people who don't have either a product or a website or a book. You know, it's kind of impossible to do that these days. But you know, these things are out there, and the technology is out there, and it would be remiss of me to not highlight things that can actually help people. And so I like supporting not just good products, but good people behind those products as well. So if people want to find out more, obviously it's HypoAir.com, right?
That's right.
Okay, and it's HYPOAir, but
medical advice of any kind.
we made it through. We made it through.
Some good questions.
We're working on it.
While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous
I think
conditions,
our mics
it can be
are
dangerous to
turned
take
off,
action based on
but
any
if
information
not,
in this
that's
blog,
okay
or
too.
to start any health program without first consulting a health professional.
Yeah,
Contact
so there were
form
some
is for
things that
informational purposes
gosh,
only,
I had
and
so
is in no way
many
intended as medical advice, as a substitute
things I
for
wanted to
medical
get to.
counsel, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition.
Keep the dialogue going, and
continue as such. Always work with a
let's do
qualified
it
health
again.
professional before making any changes to your diet,
looked it
prescription
up
drug
before
use,
we talked,
lifestyle, or
but
exercise activities. This information is provided
I
as
think we'd
is,
made a
and the
landing
reader
page for
/viewer
you guys
assumes all
sometime
risks
back.
from the use,
Oh,
non-use,
cool.
or
where
misuse
we
of this
could
information.